Hello, my name is Rynning-Tønnessen. I'm CEO of Statkraft, who is the largest producer of renewable energy in Europe.
Hi, my name is Remi Eriksen. I'm Group President and CEO of DNV.
To fight climate change, there needs to be an enormous amount of renewable energy coming, and we believe in Statkraft that electricity demand in the world will roughly double to mid-century, and the share of renewable will be threefold, so multiplied. There will be 6 times more renewable energy in the world by 2050 than we have today.
Wind and offshore wind will be an important part and will play a role in the energy system that can be electrified, which today is roughly 20% of energy use is electrified. That will double, as you said. And here, wind and offshore wind will play an important role to make a carbon-free electricity, if you like. But wind and offshore wind also play an important role in the part of the energy system that cannot be electrified through producing clean energy for the production of hydrogen. And hydrogen or related products like ammonia or methanol, and that will be extremely important to decarbonize what we call the hard-to-abate sectors. I'm talking about aviation, shipping, and also long-distance trucking, and also some high heat processes in manufacturing. And that will maybe be an even bigger challenge for the energy system going forward. I think we have made good progress on making electricity cleaner and actually making more of the energy use electrified.
We have the same view that hydrogen, to a large extent, will be produced by electricity in hydrolysis of water, green hydrogen as it is called. There will also be other forms of hydrogen coming from natural gas with carbon cleaning there. But the dominant part of electricity will be consumed as electricity, but maybe up to 10% of all electricity will be used to convert it into hydrogen and the other chemicals derived from that, exactly like you describe it. So in the future, electricity will not only be used directly, it will also be put into an energy system that will be more and more interlinked in the totality.
And if you look at offshore wind, we have, of course, bottom-fixed wind, and we have offshore floating wind, and we see big growth in both the areas. And when it comes to bottom-fixed offshore wind, they're already competitive, at least in many parts of the world. While for offshore floating wind, which is currently immature, we will have to see a further development to make that competitive. But we at DNV see also great opportunities also within offshore floating wind. So there will be a cost challenge, but also how to bring that resource to shore and how it will impact the grid on the shore side. I think that will be major things to be dealt with going forward.
Yeah, it's been an amazing cost decline on bottom fixed, and we are already competitive, as you say, in many markets. But in floating, from the industry, we believe there will be a similar development. There will be comparable in costs in a few decades, is overview there.
Yeah.
So I fully agree to that view. But it's not only the challenge is not only the integration to the grid. It's also how do we deal with the intermittency. So, of course, all wind energy need to be balanced with some other form of energy when there's no wind. And same goes for the sun. So hydrogen is also a flexible source of demand. So it can be produced when there is enough wind and sun in the system and stopped in other periods. So flexible demand will be a part of the future and hydrogen will play an important role there.
So how then would we be able to scale things faster and not take the time we have done for bottom-fixed offshore wind, but to scale offshore floating wind faster? What do you think is needed?
I think for floating, we are still at a level where we need several technology generations to get the cost down. So I think government should support projects of small to medium size. So we get more and more floating farms constructed, but of a small size. And that should be done several times in a row. Many places in the world, and that is what will bring the technology to a level where it will also be cost competitive. And when we are there, it will need to be scaled. But iterations of technology first before scaling.
Yeah, and we have seen that for every doubling of a new technology, installed doubling, you have a cost reduction between 15 to 25%.
Yeah.
So actually having this doubling is important, because then you can get the cost down quite quickly. And of course, immature technologies doubles faster than mature technologies. So I think that's important to move things forward and to get the generations up.
And Statkraft, we have a global strategy where we are dominant in Europe, but we are also in South America and India. And in India, we are developing hydropower, onshore wind and solar. But there's also a huge potential at the Indian coastline for offshore wind. So in the future, I would expect India to still have a significant amount of hydropower in the north and in the middle, a lot of sun, a lot of onshore wind, and a large portion of offshore as well. So India can be one of the leading areas in the world for renewable energy in the decades to come.
Yeah, according to our projections or our forecast, we foresee around 110 gigawatts of offshore fixed wind and 30 gigawatts.
In India alone?
In India alone. And,
that's
and 30 gigawatts of offshore floating wind. So we see great potential when you consider the wind resources and the location of the resources.
Yeah, but the same, that fits exactly with our views here. So India will play an important role in the world, actually, in renewable energy.
I agree.
And there are several places in the world where we need floating in the deep sea areas, outside Japan, here outside Norway, maybe outside California and many other places. So we need speed here.
Yeah.
So what needs to be done is for governments to set up requirements for some of the electricity used or derivatives like fuel for ships to be emission-free. Then we will have electricity and hydrogen and shipping fuels made of hydrogen being the most competitive, I would believe, but they are not coming on their own. There needs to be some regulations to speed up. It's the most important thing government can do is to make sure there is an income side for these projects.
And if you look at the world map, actually deep is not really deep when it comes to wind. If you say deep water in oil and gas, it's really deep, but deep for offshore wind is not really deep. So most of the coastal areas around the world where there are people living, it's actually deep,
yes,
where you need floating technology. So that's why I think floating will be important for the world to solve the energy transition and the climate
and there are also less
potentials.
conflicts there, because in the more shallow waters it's fisheries, it's closer to shore and likely to be more conflicted. So it's also important to avoid many conflicts to develop the floating technology as fast as possible. But it needs to go in several iterations. As I said, it could not be done in one go.
And if you look at Norway, we have not come far when it comes to wind and offshore wind in Norway, and we have not developed an industry like Denmark has done when it comes to wind industry. But I see a lot of things happening now. What do you see?
Well, if we look at what has been done in Norway offshore, it's just been a few pilot projects, but it has been announced now that there will be acreage out for both bottom fixed in the southern part and floating a bit further north. But we have an industry that has come far. Statkraft is one of the leading developers of onshore wind in Europe, and we have many projects also outside Europe, like in Brazil. Equinor is one of the leading companies to develop offshore wind. And there's a lot of supply industry engaged here. Also, DNV is engaged. So we have a lot of competence. We have the areas, we have the oil and gas industry that has been offshore for decades. So I think we have a very good starting point.
I agree. There is a lot of resources, and the offshore resources are typically very good, and the resources offshore in Norway is really good. And I think what you said, drawing on the expertise that has been developed over many years, first in shipping, then in oil and gas, that has to do with marine installations, running big projects, and dealing with the complexity. I think this is a good leverage point that Norway has, and now we have these two areas where we can start moving.
And not to forget, we have some of the best wind conditions in the world, more wind than we like, I would say, but it's a resource, of course, when we're talking about wind both onshore and offshore.
Yeah. And if we should then try to summarize, wind and offshore wind will play an important part when it comes to the whole energy system as I see it. Both the part that can be electrified directly, where the energy use can be electrified, and where the end use cannot be electrified, it can serve its purpose through the production of hydrogen and other related products like ammonia and e-methanol. So I think both you and me have a strong belief in offshore wind.
Yes, in that aspect we are optimists, but I would add that we need speed. The world need to get more renewable energy into the system much faster than we are doing today, and it needs political decision making to speed it up. So it's not coming all by itself, but I'm very optimistic that the world will be dominated by renewable energy mid-century and beyond.
So we can say that the basic technology we have, so we need strong policy drive and support to kind of develop the generations of the technology that is needed.
What is good is that we have all the technology needed, but it needs to be deployed at large scale.